Hello and welcome to the 2013 MLB Redraft. Here, as always, is Andrew Varga, and I'm always joined by Nick Aguilera. Hello, Nick.
Hi, Andrew. It's a great day.
It really is. It's beautiful outside. I wish I could go out and enjoy it, but instead, I'm doing the 2013 Redraft. All right, I'm going to go over the rules. If you haven't listened to any of the three previous editions we've done, we started in 2016 and have been working back from there. We're each going to have 15 picks. We're going to alternate. The player must have signed in that draft. Any players eligible for the draft but went undrafted are okay. You can consider them part of the draft. No players that were signed to the international free agent market are part of this draft. You're supposed to draft the best player available. You're not actually drafting a team, so don't worry if you draft 10 pitchers or something like that. And it is okay to consider if you think that players were drafted to teams that had poor development and you think, well, I'm going to draft them or will have good development. They'll be better than they actually were, but you should put more weight on past and future performance. All right, I think we're about ready to get started.
Yes, we are, and I believe
Well,
you have the first pick this time because you had the third pick last time in our three-man draft.
yes, you went ahead of me, so I'm going to take the first pick here. I'm going to go with the man who was picked with the second overall pick out of San Diego, and that is one right-handed hitter, Chris Bryant.
All right, I was not expecting that to be the first pick.
Really?
Yes, there's one guy who I thought would definitely be number one overall.
Let me guess. Does he play for a team in Southern
He
California?
does, in fact, play for a team in Southern California. Uh,
Well,
so,
I went with Chris Bryant, basically because he's 7 WAR ahead of that man from Southern California. I don't know how many players I would expect to consistently put up 9 WAR seasons. In fact, I think there's only one, and he also plays in Southern California, but for the other Southern California team. So I went with Chris Bryant, and I think that he's better than what he showed last year. I think he's can be a solid 5 to 6 WAR player for a few more years.
all right, well, for number two overall pick, this should come as no surprise. Came as a surprise to everyone that this guy's as good as he is, considering he was a fourth rounder, number 124 overall, and that's going to be Cody Bellinger.
Yeah, Bellinger, of course, that incredible year last year had the 169 OPS plus, won the National League MVP, which I know some people say Christian Yelich should have repeated. I don't think Yelich should have won either, but that's another story. But he's a superstar in the making, folks.
He is, and you mentioned earlier that Bryant had a couple war on him, about 9 war on him. But I think that Bellinger, he came up 2 years later than Bryant and has put up consistent numbers since then. Kind of had a lackluster sophomore season, but picked it back up in the playoffs. And ever since then, I think he's closer to the rookie numbers than the MVP numbers, but I still think he's a great player and someone you can build your franchise around.
I agree. I do wonder how much. I do wonder about him, just because he did have that down second year. If he kind of is going to be somebody who's up and down now, it's not like his second year was all that bad. But
No, not at all.
you do wonder about the up and down. But again, that's another thing with Chris Bryant. I just took the hit to him. Also, this is when he was drafted. There were major concerns about Chris Bryant's defense, which he's a fine defender. He's not
Yeah,
great, but he more than holds his own in third base and left field, etc.
and I think that's
So
another thing that Bellinger has on Bryant. He's already got a Gold Glove in the
yeah, and he
outfield.
can play center.
And the one thing that stuck out to me and why I went with him number one over or number two overall and had a number one on my big board, because past 2 years, 17 and 18, 64, 69 walks, and then 146, 151 strikeouts. Then this year, 95 walks, 108 strikeouts. So I don't know if that's
Now
sustainable, but I still think that his eye is improving.
I will point out that I think those 2018 numbers were inflated a little bit because of how many platoons the Dodgers had.
That's
So
true.
that was mostly against right-handed pitchers. Remember, I think it was Justin Turner and Manny Machado were the only players who played against both righties and lefties in that Dodger
Yeah.
lineup. Everybody else everybody else was a platoon player other than Yasmani Grandal, who sometimes you'd have Austin Barnes in there instead. But so those 2018 numbers are inflated a little bit. But I'm going to go with the number 3 pick. This is a man who went to school. I think this is considered Southern California, and his name is Aaron Judge. Was drafted with the 32nd overall pick.
I would call it Central California. I don't know about Southern.
You don't want to.
I don't want to claim Fresno.
I don't think anybody wants to claim Fresno, but Aaron Judge. Remember, he came up in that 2016 team. It was the Baby Bombers on the Yankees, and it's kind of funny that one of them was Tyler Austin, but beloved Giant. But he had the great 2017, and I think he's really a tremendous player. Plays a good right field, has a great power. Even though, I mean, last year 27 home runs, he missed 50 games. I don't really think of him. Well, I say I don't think of him as like a threat to get injured, even though he did. He was before the shutdown happened. He was going to start the year on the injured list, but I don't think he's somebody who's going to keep staying injured. I think he's built to last.
Yeah, that's why I didn't really have him 1 or 2 because of the injury history. If he would have been healthy, if he would have played as many games as Bellinger or Bryant, I think he could go number 1 overall in this draft.
Yeah, and the one thing that I'm kind of holding out hope for, which I don't know where this falls in the rules, but he has been. You look at the studies that look at which players have the worst, like the most unfair strike zone called against him. He's consistently amongst the top there. So if they do go to a robo zone, I think that he would really benefit there. We'd see his power go up just because pitchers would have to challenge him more.
Yeah, I think that unfair strike zone comes from just the pure unit that he is, 6'7". It's pretty much unprecedented of how huge of a human he is in the batter's box. Got to deal with that
and
giant strike zone.
and how well he moves to the outfield.
Yeah, that too.
He's not Nelson Cruz out there. All right, number 4.
Number 4, I'm going to go with the guy that was traded for Chris Archer in a very dumb trade, as we all know, and that's going to be Austin Meadows.
That's a good pick. I had one player ahead of him, but I don't fault you for that. He was an all-star last year. And it is funny how all 3 players that were traded for Chris Archer, they're all much better than he is.
Oh yeah, and two of them are already better than he is, and one of them has the potential to be better than he is. And
Yes.
this process, Shane Baz could have been traded straight up for Chris Archer, and I think it would have been a good trade for the Rays.
Oh,
But
Rays would have destroyed that trade.
yeah,
Yeah.
then you throw in an all-star caliber outfielder and a Cy Young caliber arm, and it's absurd how much they got.
It is. I remember at the time, Pirates fans were like, well, Glasnow hasn't been good for us. But what they didn't realize was they were a couple years behind on Ray Seaverage. His last year of magic, I think, was 2015. He was still pretty good in 2015. A.J. Burnett had that big year. But then after 2015, I mean, Ray Seaverage, it's incredible how he just fell off a cliff.
Yeah, no one really had that Pirates magic of becoming an ace after being a journeyman. Especially, Ray Searage never really had the stuff with young guys either. I mean, Garrett Cole, you look at him with the Pirates, he had what, 1 good year, maybe 2, and
A
then
few, yeah.
once he left, now he's the best pitcher in baseball. I think the same thing could happen with a guy like Mitch Keller.
I'm going to
So,
say best starting pitcher. There's a reliever I think is a little better than
all right, who's that
him.
guy? Who's that guy? I think I know who you're going to say.
It is one Steve Cishek. All
Yep,
right.
there we go.
Number 5 pick. This is a man that I had ranked number 4 on my draft board. Kind of came out of nowhere last year. Was a 9th-round pick, picked in the 260th overall pick out of New Mexico, and that is Mitch Garver, who I understand maybe he is a little old. He's 28, so he's older than Austin Meadows, but had a 156 OPS plus. Won the Silver Slugger last year. He did it in 93 at bats. You remember the Twins were messing around with Jason Castro for some time last year. Now Angels catcher Jason Castro,
Yep.
but he had a 1,000 OPS. He led off for the Twins, even though he didn't steal a base, which I thought was funny. A catcher who doesn't steal bases leading off. But I think that he's going to be one of the best hitting catchers up there with Gary Sanchez for years to come. So I'm going to go with Mitch Garver with the number 5
Yeah,
pick.
I agree. I think he's the best catcher in this list by far, and I think he'll be a great catcher. I don't know if he'll be as good as he was last year. I don't really see him repeating 995 OPS with a 156 OPS plus, uh,
Yeah.
because I think that he's just going to have a lot more games on his plate this year, and that's going to cut into his energy, and he might start slumping a little bit. And I think he's somewhere in the middle of 2018, 2019, probably around 800, 820, 850 OPS.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think that he's still a very valuable player right around
Yeah,
there.
exactly. It's still saying someone's going to hit 850 OPS is like saying as a bad thing. That's like it's crazy. But yeah, I do think that he'll have a little bit of regression, but I still think he'll be probably top 5 catcher in the league.
Now, the one dangerous thing is he has a stud behind him at catcher.
Oh yes, the
Williams
turtle,
Astudillo
La
is, yeah,
Tortuga.
I mean, so he might have to start working out his first base glove. That's that's the only thing. All right, pick number 6.
Pick number 6. I'm going to do another guy that pretty much came out of nowhere last year. The man they called a squirrel. That's going to be Jeff McNeil.
He was also the next man on my board. I thought it was interesting in a 2018 he kind of it wasn't like he was great, but or he didn't do it over a huge sample, but he kind of got some attention from some stat people just because he never struck out.
Yeah,
It was, I mean, he had 248 plate appearances, struck out in 24 of them. And then we saw that last year in the first half, he hit just like that. And then in the second half, he started striking out a lot more and hitting a lot more tanks. So I thought it was interesting how he showed that he's two different hitters.
yeah, and I think that's both of those hitters are valuable. I mean, only had 75
Oh yeah.
strikeouts on the season, but that OPS of 916, consistent from last year, we're at 852 OPS. I mean, I think this guy is a great major league hitter and a great yang to Pete Alonso's yin.
And he can play a whole lot of positions. Isn't
Yeah, very versatile.
Yeah, he's not bad out there. So I'm very in on Jeff McNeil. I think he's very funny. He
Me
also
too.
had the Spider-Man catch up against the netting against the White Sox. That was him, right?
I believe so. I got
It
to
was
be reminded of that, but I believe it was him.
it was either him or Brandon Nimmo. I'm looking it up. It was definitely Jeff McNeil. That was which was an unexpected upside to the
Yeah.
protected netting.
And let's talk about the value too. He was taken in the 12th round, 356 overall pick, and now this guy's one of the better hitters in the league.
Yeah, he was a Long Beach is the Dirtbags, right?
That is the Dirtbags.
So he was a dirtbag out of college. All right. Well, with the number 7 pick, I'm going to go with somebody who I'm going to guess that you don't have this high on your board. And part of this is the development. He was picked with the 3rd overall pick, and that is going to be John Gray, who was drafted out of Oklahoma.
Right? Yeah, you'd be surprised. I had him kind of high on my list. I had him at number 10 overall, so not too
Okay.
far off from where you had him. But yeah, I
I
agree.
ha-
The development kind of stunned him a little bit. And last year he had a great season, and I
yeah,
think
he had a great,
He's closer to that pitcher than the one that he was the year before.
and it got almost no coverage either. And part of that is that the Rockies stunk last year, but John Gray, I mean, if you can put up, he has a 3.77 career FIP, a 4.46 career ERA, and some of that is that he's always had a much lower FIP than his ERA. I
Oh
remember
yeah,
when he came up, it was his ERA was in like the tens and his FIP was in the threes. And some of the thought was that well, he has a really straight fastball, maybe that's why. But at cores, generally, I like to think you not a run off the ERA. Maybe that's a bit simplistic, but also you only pitch half your games at cores. But I think that he's shown himself that he can be. I think that he might be an ace if you put him onto a quote unquote normal team. And I think that he's definitely a number 2 or number 3. And then I think 2018 was the outlier, and he's much more like the 2017, 2019 pitcher.
Yeah, I think he's more of the 2017, 2019, 2017. His FIP was 3.18, which is incredible.
Yeah.
But the past 2 years, 4.08 and 4.06, still good. The year before, led the league in earned runs. Somehow gave up 27 home runs, even though his FIP was that low, and considering he was playing at Coors, still
And a
incredible.
12-9 record.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. Uh, but the one thing that worries me is his WHIP.
Yeah.
1.335 is not kind of whip you want from a shutdown guy, but I think you can overlook that and move him out of cores. It'll get a lot lower.
Yeah. All right. Pick number 8.
Pick number 8. I'm going to go with a guy that caused a little bit of a controversy over the off season. For those of you that don't know, I help with Classically Famous's Twitch stream, who is also known as Blake Snell. And this guy was traded alongside a slapdick prospect for Tommy Pham, and that's going to be the 13th overall pick in 2013, Hunter Renfroe.
I had him number 13 on my big board.
Really?
I think that it was a classic Rays pick where they trade a better player in Pham, but they get, instead of 2 years, they get 4 years Renfro. Well, the thing that I'm not a huge fan of with Renfro is that he does not walk a whole lot. He's got a 294 on base percentage for his career. And so, I mean, I've seen him play a lot. I'm a Giants fan, so I've seen a lot of the NL West. And even though he is a powerful hitter, this kind of the intangible. I've never really thought like, oh, Hunter Renfro is up now. I feel I'm really scared right now, which is bizarrely, I do feel that way about Will Myers. So Renfro's a better hitter than Will Myers is, but I'm down on Hunter Renfro.
Yeah, the strikeout numbers are not pretty, but where he lacks in the on base, he brings the slugging percentage. Never had a slugging or never had a OPS under 750 for his career, and plus last year, what I saw at the glove, I was very impressed. Nearly Gold Glove caliber. He
Yeah,
was really good in the outfield last year.
you don't think of a high strikeout guy like him as a high strikeout power hitting guy, as a guy who profiles as a good defensive player, but he really can play right field. He's got a really good arm too.
Yeah, he's got a cannon out there, and I think that bringing him in, I think he's a better defender than Pham, and you can shift Meadows to left, bring Renfro in at right, and that that helps that Rays defense astronomically.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to Pham, but his defense fell off a cliff.
I think it was just the speed that helped him with his defense. I don't really think he was ever that great of a defender, but as he gets older, I think the defense has gone down because the speed has gone down a little bit.
Do you remember when the Cardinals needed a fourth outfielder and they had the choice of either Tommy Pham or they could try to make Matt Adams play left field,
And
and
they
they decided
chose,
to go
yeah, they
with
chose
Matt
Matt Adams. So that should
Adams.
tell you something about Tommy Pham's defense right there.
Yes. All right. Well, I'm going to go with the number 9 overall pick. This is a man who's number 8 on my big board. Was originally drafted by the Kansas City Royals and then was traded for Ben Zobrist to the Oakland A's. I'm going to go with Sean Manaea, who has had a real solid career so far. 8.5 WAR, was real good last year when he came back in 5 games, although Yandy Diaz kind of owned him in the wild card game. But I'm going to go Sean Manaea, who's had a lot of solid years to start his career. Has kind of been the solid number 2, number 3. Probably don't want him to be your ace, but he can be a real credible number 2. And I think that he's going to be a good pitcher for years to come.
Yeah, the baby giraffe, as they call him, uh, had that no hitter in 2018. Uh, yeah, I think he's a great pitcher. I think that last year, the injuries, I think is a little bit fluky. I don't think he's going to be injured very often in his career. So him getting limited to 5 starts last year was disappointing, but I don't think it'll happen again. But in those 5 starts, he was incredible. Had a 1.21 ERA. The one thing that worries me is the FIP is a little bit higher than the ERA almost consistently every year outside of 2017. But I still think he's a good pitcher. Right around where Gray is, I think that he's in a good situation with the A's. So I think that if the A's had John Gray, he would be close to what Mania is.
That's a good point. And I think that part of that FIP could probably be explained by the foul territory
Yeah.
in Oakland. The fact that he's got two guys in the corner infield who are very good at tracking down balls in that fair territory. Although, to be fair, it's not as if he's played his whole career with them. But uh, having Matt Chapman play behind and Matt Olson play behind you probably helps you a little bit.
Yeah, and plus a
Well,
revamped Marcus Simeon.
a revamped Marcus Semien, yes. Gosh, I remember when he first came up, it was as if he could not throw for his
No, he
life.
was not a good defender at all. But
I
and
want to
then
go back.
2 years later, now he's a Gold Glove candidate.
Ron Washington, folks. Maybe not a good manager, but he's an incredible coach. I want to go back to you mentioned the no hitter that he threw, which I
Mm,
forgot about. I've always enjoyed this no hitter. I thought it was very funny. It was a game at the Coliseum. The lights in left field went out, and so the game did not start until about 8:45 local time here in California.
huh.
And so he wrapped up his at about 11:45 or so at night. And initially, I follow a bunch of A's beat writers on Twitter. They're like, "Oh, I'm gonna have to stay here so long." They were all all super bummed out about the delay, and then they ended up getting a no hitter out of it. But my favorite thing was that the game ended right around 2:30, 2:45 on the East Coast. So there were a lot of folks who woke up to finding out about the Shabaniah no hitter, which I always thought was pretty funny.
Yeah, the fact that all the Red Sox fans went to bed and waking up in the morning, you're like, we got no hit by Sean Mania. It's pretty funny to me.
It was they were going against the Cincinnati Reds, but
Oh, it was the Reds. I thought it was the Red Sox. Who threw the
it was
Reds?
the
Who threw the no hitter against the Red Sox? That was that Fires that threw the Red Sox no hitter.
that must have been Fires.
Because I remember
Or
that.
no, pardon me, Mania did throw it against the Red Sox.
There we go. Yeah, that's
It
what I
was
thought.
Fires against the Reds. My bad. Well, then I messed all that up because it's the Fires one late, not the Mania one. I'm very disappointed in myself right now. I remember we were watching the Mania one was when we were still at or my freshman year. The
Yeah,
Fires one was the one that went deep. Well, that was very ignorant of me.
that's all
Maybe
right. We're all here just for fun. So
maybe that'll be edited post, but time for pick number 10.
pick number 10. The fun thing about this draft is anyone on my list between 7 and 15, I could really see going at any point now. But I'm gonna go with a guy that has really carved out a nice career for himself, despite being a 22nd round pick, and that's gonna be Luke Voigt.
Ooh, boy, I had it much lower than you did. I had him the number 26 spot.
Really? Wow.
He was, yeah, he was drafted as a catcher. I mean, part of it is that he was a real late bloomer. I do think that he can definitely hit, but I think that he's a bad base runner and a bad defensive player and limited to first base only. And so that was why although apparently he played right field, he played one inning of right field in 2018. I want to see that, but I don't, I guess I'm a lot lower on his profile. He's also 28.
I think last year he showed he can hit in the major league level, 21 home runs in 118 games. I still think there's a little bit more power he can tap into. I think he's uh, kind of a little bit of a product of Yankee Stadium, but still 873 career OPS. I think even though being a late bloomer, even with the high strikeout numbers, I still think that this guy is one of the better hitters in this draft class.
All right. Well, I'm going to go to pick number 11. And this was a fellow who was number 9 on my big board. And very similar, very similar picks I've made to back now of solid pitchers who aren't aces but are pretty solid. I'm going to go with the left-hander Marco Gonzalez, who was drafted with the 19th overall pick by the Cardinals. They ended up trading him to the Mariners for Tyler O'Neill, who we might hear from later in the draft. One of my favorite Marco things was I'm not sure many people know this, but he actually pitched against the Giants in 2014 in the NLCS when they would win the World Series after that. Same thing with Carlos Martinez in 2012 against the Giants, pitched out of the bullpen in that series. But he's been in the big leagues longer than you think. Last year was his 5th season in the big leagues. Has made 77 starts, has a 4.25 ERA, but I think he's somewhere around where he was in 2018. Kind of pitches to a low 4s, high 3s ERA. Can really give you innings. He pitched 203 innings last year, which is unimaginable for
Yeah.
today's game at this point. Never going to be a big strikeout guy who doesn't throw all too hard, but I think that he's a solid pitcher who should be a workhorse for your team.
All right. As you had Voit low on your list, I also had Gonzalez low on mine.
Where'd you have
I
him?
had him in the mid-20s.
Oh, well, I guess I'm higher on the pitchers and you're higher on
Yeah,
batters, which I
I
will
guess
give you
so.
credit. Luke Voigt's a big man, so I feel
I
bad
know,
because
yeah. I,
he's going to be able to play for years just because of all that energy he
he's got
has.
all the stored energy that he needs to stay in baseball for at least a couple more years.
I also wish that we got to see Luke Voigt as a catcher in the big
That would
leagues.
have been fun. But
Remind
I think he would have had trouble uh, absurding Yadi Molina behind the plate over there in St. Louis, so they had to move him.
I think it was more about Tony Cruz than Yadier.
They also could have been training Tony Cruz to be the heir to the throne.
Or no, pardon me, not Tim Fedorovich. It was who did they pick up from the Francisco Pena? That's who it
That's who
was.
it was. Yeah.
I respect Francisco Pena. All right, you have pick number 11 right here. Or
Pick
pardon
number
me, number
11,
12.
number 12. Well, that's good because this guy used to be number 12. This guy was taken 17th overall pick, won the batting title in the American League last year, and that's going to be Tim Anderson.
I had him next on my big board. I do wonder with him. Obviously, I'm sure this is why he went so low, even though he won the batting title. I mean, that BABIP is ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, over the past couple of years, he's kind of ran away the starting job for the White Sox. Didn't really impress up until 2019. Sub 700 OPS 2 straight years, being a regular there. The batting average was 257, 240, respectively, both in 606 plate appearances. This year really came out of nowhere. Drew a lot of strikeouts as usual. His OBP was only 20 points higher than his batting average. He only drew 15 walks all year. So he's one of the guys that just swings at the ball pretty much aimlessly. But for him it works, I guess. And I'm hoping that he lands somewhere being a career 280 hitter, 790 OPS, and I think that's pretty much what kind of player he'll be from now on going into the future.
Yeah, good base stealer too. Good defender at short. I think this was a good. I mentioned I had him next on my big board. I think this was a good place for him to go. And he's very funny. I like how he makes certain people angry.
Yeah, I love the bat flips. Like that's the energy you need. I don't see why people hate him so much just because he likes to flip his bat and have fun on the baseball field.
And he donates money for each home run he hits. He donates money to organizations that support survivors of domestic violence. I think he's wonderful. All
Yeah,
right, I'm gonna
just
go with the 13th pick. This fellow was drafted in these. This is a bit of a reach right here, but I'm going to explain it. This fellow was drafted in the 16th round with the 475th pick out of West High School in Wisconsin,
okay.
and that is
Before you select this guy, I do not have him on my top 30.
you do not have him
I
on
have
your
no
top
one
30.
from the 16th round on my top 30.
All right, well, this is Danny Jansen,
Okay.
who has oh my goodness. Well, forgive me. I looked at the 1 OPS plus on his baseball reference page, and I thought that was his career number. He's actually 80 overall. Well, I'm going to take him off of my board then.
Yeah, last year he didn't really have that great of a season. I could have seen why because the year
Yes.
before was kind of a little
I'm
bit better, but last year not very good.
well. That is, I've made some bad mistakes in this podcast. I do apologize. Um, I'm going to go with the man who is now the new number 11 on the board, and that is Brad Keller, who was a Rule 5 pick of the Kansas City Royals. They got him from Arizona in the Rule 5 draft, and he has had two real good years to start his career. Was even coming out of the bullpen to start things out. I believe he's the first Rule 5 pick drafted in this redraft. Has a 3.68 ERA over his career. I think he's another guy. I guess I'm just going with a lot of the. Now I'm not going with Danny Jansen. Another guy who is who can be a real solid 2 through 4 somewhere around the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, you're a big fan of those guys that have kind of the high floor, low ceiling. But I think Keller's a good pitcher. Uh, it's kind of like for you, I guess you're just drafting guys that have the track record of being solid major league starters. Uh, so again, with him, like same thing I said with instead of John Gray, the WHIP scares me a little bit. The,
Yeah.
the FIP is a little high, especially last year. It was 4.35. But yeah, I think he's a solid 4 or 5 starter. And if he can, somehow get more some more stuff on his breaker, he could be a good 3 starter.
And I do think he's somebody. This kind of goes against conventional wisdom, but I actually think that guys who have big stuff. I think that I assume that they're more likely to outpush their FIP than guys who are soft contact, low velocity pitchers. Only thing with him is that he does walk a lot of batters, 70 and 165 at a third, but I do think that he could outpitch that FIP a little bit.
All right. Well, now going into the 15th pick. This is the last one before intermission. For me, I'm going with another pitcher. This guy had a solid season last year.
This is pick number 14.
Oh, 14. Okay. My apologies. So, pick number 14, I'm going with the guy who had a solid season last year, especially in the first half of the season. Hasn't really had the best track record as a pitcher, but I think that he's really starting to turn it around. Uh, and that's going to be Matt Boyd.
Who was next on my big board. And by drafting him, that means that I'm going to stop my streak of the the solid but unspectacular starting pitchers.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what he's been his entire career, solid but unspectacular. But last year, especially in the first half of last year, he was very good. And I think that the second half of last year, he was kind of a fluke. I think that he's closer to probably the pitcher he was in 2018, uh, and probably can still improve. I mean, he's 28 now, going into his prime, but I still think that there is room for him to improve, especially if he can get the home run numbers down.
And the one thing that is a concern, where he went to school,
Yeah, of course.
not
We
great.
we
So I
don't like
do,
that school.
yeah, we're not fans of that school. So you do wonder if he has that mid-major mentality, which and it's more dangerous with mentality when you go to a power conference school.
Yeah, that is dangerous.
So that's the dangerous thing. All right. Well, this is going to be the last pick before intermission. This is a fellow who, unlike the other pick I made, I actually will take him at this point, even though he has low WAR for his career. He's been in the negative WAR actually for his career.
All right.
Negative point two. Was drafted in the first round, fifth overall pick. Was drafted by Cleveland and then was traded for Andrew Miller, and he was drafted at Loganville High School in Georgia. And I'm going Clint Frazier with the number 15 pick. He's the wild card pick, and I'm taking him basically because I believe that he can hit. I think that he's been blocked by a lot of players in that Yankees organization, but I still believe he can hit to all. Last year's a 24-7 games and a 111 OPS plus, and I think that he's going to be a solid everyday outfielder for whatever team he ends up getting traded to.
Yeah, I think that he's really been blocked for close to like 5 years now. Man, I mean, when he was in Cleveland, they had Michael Brantley blocking him. Now being in New York, you have about 6 different guys that are blocking him. So I think, yeah, once he gets traded, hopefully this season, he comes up and really starts to hit because I believe in the hit tool as well.
And I was at his big league debut in Houston. He came up, hit a home run. It's the only game I've ever attended Houston. And then I thought, well, this guy's going to have a great career. And so far, it has not gone that way. Now it is time for intermission, and during intermission, we go over all the some of the notable unsigned players from the draft, the players who were drafted and did not sign, and we also go over the players that teams gave up qualifying offers for. And this is the first year of the new qualifying offer rules. Remember, they changed it up. It
Yeah,
used to be a lot. You would get compensatory picks for a lot more players leaving. You get a lot more compensatory picks. Not really the case before 2013, or pardon me, after 2013. So this is the first draft with the qualifying offer, the current qualifying offer rules, although they changed it up a little bit. So first, we're going to go over the unsigned players. Phil Bickford was drafted, a former Giants first round pick. I only included him here because of that. With the 10th overall pick, he would go back to school and then get drafted by the Giants 2 years later. He must have wanted to be a Giant. Kevin Biggio was a 29th round draft pick with the 871st pick. He was drafted by Philadelphia. Andrew Benintendi was drafted with the 945th overall pick by the Cincinnati Reds in the 31st round, and the left-hander AJ Puck was drafted with the 1056th pick by the Detroit Tigers. I do wonder what do you think that teams think when they draft these guys that are obviously not going to sign? Do you think they're like, well, maybe we could convince Andrew Benintendi or AJ Puck to sign out of the 30 this is around in the 30s.
I don't think that's their mentality, because like most of the guys, you see like guys like Jack Leiter, last year, who are so committed to going to school that they just drop all the way to the 30s, 20s. I just think that drafting them is a way to like get connection with them, so that way when it comes to drafting them coming out of college, they don't say, "Yeah, I don't want to play for you guys, so I'm going back to school." So I feel like they're just kind of setting. I know it's rare that players go to the teams that drafted them out of high school and then go to the teams that draft them out of college as well.
Yeah.
So I think it's just kind of just touching base with them, I guess. There's no real way I can put that into words, but it's kind of just like making a connection, I guess.
All right. Well, we have all learned something new today. And now we are going to go over the qualifying offer players. There was one here that made a fair amount of sense. Justin Upton got a qualifying offer. That makes sense.
Hmm.
There was one that made sense at the time, even though it might make you angry, and that is Josh Hamilton,
Yep.
who is not a very good person. We'll leave it at that.
Yep.
Then the rest of these are pretty funny. We can start out with Kyle Loesch got
Oh
a
man.
qualifying offer
Oh
attached to him,
man.
which I think was a deal the Brewers regretted. Although he actually, well, now I'm looking through Kyle Loesch's numbers. He actually had 2 pretty good years with the Brewers, and that last year, 2015, was a disaster. Another pit, or actually, we'll save the pitcher for last. He's the funniest. There were
Okay.
2 players signed by Cleveland that they gave up first round picks. Well, I guess they had to give up a second round pick for one of them. One was Nick Swisher.
Oh man, like 40-year-old Nick Swisher.
Yes, he was coming off a year with an 837 OPS, and he proceeded in the next 2 seasons for Cleveland. He put up a great OPS of 702.
Huh, that's tough.
and at the time of his release had a 558 OPS with Cleveland in 2015. The another player they got who, I'm going to say he didn't work out was Michael Bourne.
I don't think that worked out very well.
Yeah, Michael Bourne would put up two really good seasons of a 675 OPS overall with Cleveland, and then had a 608 OPS in 2015 when they released him. But he went to the Diamondbacks where he improved to a 561 OPS. So actually, did not improve there, but he did finish his career in Baltimore, putting up a 112 OPS plus in 24 games in
I remember that
2016.
vaguely, and then he just like retired after that.
And would you believe it? He appeared more in the wild card game that year than Zach Britton did.
Yep,
All right.
that's true.
Well, this is the one I've been saving for last. I think I mentioned to you some point yesterday that David Robertson was not the first reliever to get a qualifying offer. The first reliever was Rafael Soriano.
Oh man, you didn't tell me that.
It was Rafael Soriano, who actually was not that bad. He had a 3.11. His ERAs with the Nationals, who signed him with that deal, he had a 3.15 ERA, pitched in 132 games. He had the mentality, 75 saves.
Yeah.
So it sounds funny at first, but he was actually pretty good for them. And
Yeah, he's
then
very good. I mean, he's one of the guys where we always laugh, but he actually had a good MLB career. Uh, I mean, career 289 ERA. I mean, that's really good.
he must have gotten injured after that because he only pitched 6 games after that. Pitched with the
Yeah.
Oh, that's what it was. He had a bad second half in 2014.
Oh, that
And
makes sense. That makes sense for a 34-year-old.
yeah, Drew Storen took over as closer. I forgot about that. Well, I enjoyed Drew Storen as the Nationals closer in the 2014 playoffs.
I don't think Nationals fans did.
I don't think they ever, in any big game, enjoyed Drew Storen. Soriano, a career 2.51 ERA in the postseason. He pitched 2 1/3 shutout innings in the 2014 NLDS. All right, well, I think we're ready to get back to action, don't
Yes,
you?
sir.
All right. This draft does have a big fall off from the Chris Bryant, Cody Bellinger, Aaron Judges of the world, but you do have solid players, guys who have shown that they can contribute to big league teams throughout the top 30. I would say throughout the top 35 or so.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
we have some nice depth in this draft. You have pick number 16.
Pick number 16. I'm going with the guy that was drafted in the 8th round, 249th overall pick. This guy should have been an all-star last year, but as we learned in the last podcast that we did, it went to John Means, and that's going to be Trey Mancini.
I had one position player ahead of him. I had him at the number 16 spot in my board, but I think this is a pretty good pick. And it feels like he's been up in the big leagues forever, even though it's only 2017 was his first year where he got regular playing time. I don't know about you. It feels a lot longer than that to me.
Yeah, no, it definitely feels like he's been in the league for a while. Uh, but, one thing that did surprise me, though, not just the time he's played, is the WAR he has gotten in his career, only at 6.6. I
Yeah,
expected him to have a much higher WAR than that.
I would guess that that's more about the defensive spectrum. He's plays first base, or on days where Chris Davis is at first base, he goes out to left field, and it's not as if he's not going to win a Gold Glove anytime soon. So that's my guess there. I'm going to go with the number 17 pick right here, and this is a gentleman who was I had one spot ahead of Trey Mancini, had him number 15 on my big board. And that is Adam Frazier, who was drafted in the 6th round, was the 179th pick out of Mississippi State, and had a very good, has had a better career than you would think. Probably, I'm not talking about you, and I'm using the general you.
Yeah,
I know you're watching a lot of Pirates games to watch Davidas
of
Neverauskas,
course.
but I would assume that the average fan is not watching a whole lot of the Pirates, but he's had a 103 OPS plus through his career, can play a solid middle infield. Last year only played second base, but he can play. He's played the corner outfield in his career, can play a little bit of short, can play third base. He's even played a little bit of center field. But I think that he's a solid average hitter who can play pretty good defense at a whole lot of positions. And so I'm going to take Adam Frazier here. And I do think he maybe has a little more upside in the bat. I think he could career highs 10 home runs. I think he could do a little bit better than that.
Yeah, no, he's definitely been a solid hitter throughout his career, and I think that a little bit more pop can come from him. But I mean, he has 33 doubles, 7 triples last year. Uh, but he's a guy that doesn't really strike out, kind of has high walk numbers, just doesn't have much pop as you would expect. But yeah, very solid player that a lot of people don't know about.
There's a lot of players on that Pirates team who could quietly play. All right, pick number 18.
Pick number 18, I'm going with a guy that you are very familiar with, and that's going to be a guy that came up last year, had a very good rookie season, 123 OPS plus, originally drafted by the Baltimore Orioles in 2013 in the 14th round, and that's going to be Mike Yastrzemski.
That's an interesting pick. I actually had him. Now, I've watched a lot of him. I had him down at the number 28 spot on my
Really?
big board. And part of that is that I do wonder if he's an everyday player just because I watched him last year. You could get him with a good fastball. He had a lot of trouble with velocity. He was also the best hitter on that Giants team, and it wasn't particularly close. At the end of the season, when the Giants were horrible in September, they it was a lot of times if the Giants were going to have a chance, it was going to have to be Yastrzemski, which was not something I expected to say. But I do wonder with him just how much of a whether he's going to be a fourth outfielder. He's not. He has played some center, but he's not really a center fielder. He should probably be in a corner. Now he does have a very good glove, so I'll give him credit for that. But I do wonder just how just what his future role is going to be.
Yeah, I think the future is a little bit murky for him, but I do think that he is a good player. I do think that even if he does end up as a bench bat, it's a very good bench bat to have. 852 OPS last year. Uh, his strikeout numbers, as you said, kind of has trouble catching up to the Heat. 107, 107 strikeouts last year compared to 32 walks. But I think that even though he's a late bloomer, uh, he does have a lot of he does have a lot of good um, bat to ball skills. I think that he can, keep this up. Not nearly to the level that he had last year, but I think that if he's a 750 plus OPS guy, that's a solid MLB player.
All right. Well, he was one of a few players that Farhan Zaidi found last year. We're going to go with the number 19 pick. I'm going to go with the man who was number 17 on my big board. And he's going to be a very similar pick that to Clint Frazier. I'm going to go with Dom Smith, who's been worth a career negative zero point 0.7 WAR in his career, but last year in 89 games he had a 134 OPS plus. And I'm all in on Dom Smith. I think that's who he is. I think he needs to get traded. He can't. He is not an outfielder. So I'm going to go with Dom Smith here.
Yeah, Dom Smith. I think he had a pretty good season last year, despite playing in limited time. Couldn't really find a spot on the Mets, but I think that yeah, he could be a good player. Uh, yeah, last year only 177 at bats, but got a 134 OPS plus with 11 home runs, 25 RBIs. He gets on base for a guy that kind of didn't really do that early in his career. But last year, 355 on base percentage, and throughout the minors, he's been hitting. He's been hitting like a madman. So I think, yeah, he just needs a new situation. I think that he's kind of blocked there with the Mets.
Yeah, it's similar things with Frazier and with Smith. Frazier's not going to be better than Aaron Judge anytime soon, and Smith is not going to be better than Pete Alonso. But I mean, I think they're both solid players. All right, you have pick number 20.
All right, for pick number 20, I'm going to go with another guy that kind of came onto the scene last year. I don't know how good this guy actually is going to be, but last year was pretty solid in center for the Cleveland Indians. This guy's a second round draft pick. That's going to be Oscar Mercado.
Good pick. He was next on my board.
Yeah, I mean, I liked watching him last year. He's very fun to watch. Good stolen base guy. Uh, Decent slugging. 96 OPS plus, which is lower than I expected, but 2.5 WAR in a little over half a season. I think
And
he's a solid player.
And I should mention he was actually drafted by St. Louis, and then they traded him in 2018. They traded him thinking that he was not going to make their 40 man. He had to be protected, and he had to be protected after 2018. And so that is why they traded him. But I think that he's a real solid player. I think that he can be a league average hitter or so and play good outfield, and that's about as well as you're going to do at this point of the draft.
Yeah, I mean, and going forward, I think he can improve. He's only 24, 269 batting average last year. I think that he's more of a 280 hitter at his peak. So I think there's still room for improvement for him.
All right. Well, I'm going to go with pick number 21 here. I'm going to go with a man who was ranked number 19 on my big board, was drafted out of Miami-Dade College, the Kendall campus, they clarified. Was drafted by the Atlanta Braves in the second round and then was traded for Emilio Bonifacio. And that is Victor Caratini, I'm going to go with here, who struggled his first 2 years in the big leagues, but last year had a 104 OPS plus, and I think that's kind of more who he is at 11 home runs. Had a pretty good strikeout to walk ratio. He struck out about 2 times for every walk, which is pretty good for today's game. And I think that he can play catcher, and his framing numbers on Baseball Prospectus were pretty good. Some of that might be that he's playing with guys who hit their spots like John Lester, Kyle Hendricks, but also played with Yu Darvish, who had a good year last year, but could be a bit wild. He had to catch Tyler Chatwood a whole bunch. So being able to get those two good framing numbers is pretty good. Now, I do wonder at some point if the issue is forced between him and Wilson Contreras, because Contreras is one of the worst framers in the big leagues right now.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you. I did not have Caratini on my big board, but that's because I'm not really sure what kind of player he is. Last year had the best season of his career, got .9 WAR in 95 games, but the past 2 years he's just been nothing more than a backup catcher. Uh, so I really don't know if he's just a glove first guy who can kind of hit, or if he's a guy who really is a complete package.
I'm I'm confident enough in him that he can be a lower end starting catcher. That even if he's not a 104 OPS plus guy, he can be in the 90 to 95. And if you do that with good framing numbers, you can be in that 10 to 20 range as a starting catcher, which I think is so I feel comfortable picking him here with the 21st pick.
All right. Well, for the 22nd pick, I'm not gonna lie. There's been uh good numbers, good number of Pittsburgh Pirates in this draft. This one's gonna be a guy who we're so familiar with, a guy that we always throw the forks up for. That's gonna be Arizona State alum Trevor Williams.
And Trevor Williams, he's kind of the epitome of the good career thus far. You don't know how much he's going to do in the future. Had a brutal year last year, but then his 2018 was really good.
Yeah,
So,
I still think he's closer to 2017 pitcher, but
yeah.
even in 2017, 407 ERA, 403 FIP, 105 ERA plus. It's a solid four starter right there. Eats some innings, 150, 145 plus in each of the last 3 years. Doesn't really get hurt. I think he's a good pitcher, not a great pitcher. And I'm surprised you didn't take him because he's right up your alley. The guy with a high floor, low ceiling pitcher.
Yeah, I think why I didn't take him were the guys who I took, Gray, Mania, Gonzalez, Keller. They all, if they hit, they're probably well, other than Gray, I would say they're probably not aces, even if they hit. But I think that they could be number twos. I don't see that with Trevor Williams. I think that if he pitches well, he's at best a number three. So that's why saw him as different than those other two. I think that he could maybe have a couple seasons where he puts up 3 or 4 WAR at best. The other guys I see could put up seasons of 5 WAR.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be like you said. I don't think he'll put up any sort of incredible numbers, but I still think he's a solid pitcher, and that's why at this point in the draft, that's why I'm taking him.
All right. Well, he was the next man on my big board. So I have to go down a spot to a man who is number 21 on my big board. With the 23rd overall pick, I'm going similar to Trevor Williams. I'm going to go with the guy who's had a solid career thus far, and that is Chad Green, who was drafted in the 11th round. The 336 pick was a good draft pick by the Tigers, but they did not hold on to him. They traded him to the Yankees for Justin Wilson. And so here we are, and Chad Green has had a 3.16 career ERA and 169 appearances. He's listed as having 24 starts, but I believe only 9 of those were actual starts. The rest of them were as an opener. And he's a real solid pitcher, gets a lot of strikeouts, 347 and 259 in a third. And I think that he's a eighth, ninth inning guy, somewhere around there in a normal bullpen. The Yankees bullpen is insane, but I think that he's a solid reliever. You never know with relievers, but he has been a solid reliever for 3 years now. So I'm gonna go Chad Green.
Chad Green really uh, made himself into a nice reliever, uh, part of that Yankees super pen. And, I would have had him higher if he wasn't a reliever because he's a very
Yeah.
good pitcher. But the fact that he's a reliever, I know how we both think about relievers, especially taking them high in drafts.
Yes. That's it is risky.
All right, well, what pick are we on? 26,
You
20, 24?
no 24.
24. All right, for pick number 24, I'm going to go with the guy that, I really don't think he's this high on my list, but considering the guys behind him, this guy is going to go kind of high just because I think he has a little bit more potential than the rest of the people in this draft. This guy was traded to the Miami Marlins from the New York Yankees, and that's going to be Caleb Smith.
Caleb Smith, I did not have him in my top 30. I put him as an honorable mention.
I think that he has a little bit more potential. I think he's being on the Marlins kind of stunts him a little bit,
Yeah.
but in 2018 had a good season, 4.19 ERA, 3.96 FIP. The ERA plus really isn't there because he doesn't strike out a ton of guys, uh, but I think that if he can, honestly, if he can get out of Miami to a team that has a good pitching coach, he could be something.
All right. Well, he was traded with Garrett Cooper, another player who was drafted in this draft. So we'll have to see whether Garrett Cooper goes. I'm going to go to pick number 25. This is the gentleman who was number 22 on my big board, was drafted and developed and currently plays for the Cincinnati Reds, and that is Michael Lorenzen, who I'm taking for many different reasons. One, that I think that he's a solid reliever. I don't think he's great. I definitely don't think he's a starting pitcher, which they tried for a couple of years, or his rookie year. But I think that he's a solid reliever. The last 2 years has had an ERA either in the low twos or the high twos or the low threes. The FIP has not been there, but I do think you put up 2 seasons like this, I'm at least going to take you a little more seriously. And last year he did have the strikeouts that he did not have the year before and had a big velocity bump as well. And he can also hit a little bit. Wasn't a great hitter last year, but can hit a little bit. He adds a little bit of value that way and is definitely a good pinch runner, a surprisingly good defender in the outfield. And so I'm going to go with the utility man, Michael Lorenz.
Yeah, that's something I was gonna mention is that he is a great outfielder for being a pitcher. Uh, he had some highlight reel catches in center last year. They put him in center. A guy who is
Yes.
a reliever, they put him in center field. So I don't know if that says more about Lorenzen's ability to play in the outfield or the lack of defense that the Cincinnati Reds have. But he was solid out there, and I think that was the most surprising thing. And yeah, you said he could hit a little bit, hit a little bit more in 2018. 2018, he was actually a good hitter, 1,000 OPS, but looking at his career every year, it alternates. In 2015, 576, 2016, 1,000, 2017, 583, 2018, 1,043, 2019, 596. So I think in 2020, we would have seen the best Michael Lorenzen uh, we've seen thus far.
And he did something that was very impressive. He hit a home run off Pedro Baez, and not many men can say that.
No, not at all.
But this is, I mean, but part of it is also the Dodgers put him in a non-safe situation.
Yeah, that's on them. They can't be doing that.
It's hard to get the adrenaline up when you're pitching against a reliever in the fifth inning.
It's true.
All right, you have pick number 26 here.
All right, for pick number 26, I'm going to go with another guy that has San Diego Padre and Tampa Bay Ray connections. This guy was quietly one of the best relievers in baseball last year. He had 20 saves, so he has the mentality. 2.31 ERA, 96 strikeouts in just 70 innings pitched, and that's going to be Emilio Pagan.
My favorite Emilio Pagan thing is how he has played 4 seasons in the big. Well, this would have been his fourth season in the big league, and each time it was for a different team. He gets traded each off season, which is just funny to me. I don't know what it is about Emilio that makes that happen, but he went from Seattle to Oakland, to Tampa Bay to San Diego, and it's not as if he has any partial seasons. No, I mean, he's not traded mid-season. It's always in the off season. So I don't know what it is about him that makes that happen, but I find that pretty funny.
Yeah, and like the only bad season he's had was the one with Oakland, where he had 4.92 FIP, 4.35 ERA. But every year it just seems like a team doesn't want him. I don't know why the Rays traded him because he was by far their best reliever last year. But I guess they just believe in Nick Anderson that much more.
And that was such a bizarre trade too, because they did not need another fielder.
No, they really didn't, especially not another center fielder when you have Kevin Kiermaier out there.
Yeah, and if Margot doesn't play center, he doesn't play.
Yeah, because he's not going to upsert Meadows or Renfro because they can both hit both sides from the mound. So
I wonder if, and they did this with Yandy Diaz. I wonder if they see something that they could change in his swing, and they think that that's what they could. That's the big upside there. But Emilio Pagan has a very interesting story. All right, I'm gonna go pick number 26. This man was number 23 on my big board. Was drafted out of the Virginia Polytech Institute. Is another utility man like Michael Lorenzo, but he doesn't pitch, he hits. And he has been a decent hitter in his career, about average. He's been worth 4.4 WAR, and I think he can add a couple more to that. I'm going to go with the Oakland Athletic Chad Pinder.
Chad Pinder had just one guy ahead of him on my list, but yeah, solid pick.
All right. Well, I don't think there's a whole lot to say about Chad Pinder. All
No,
right. Pick number
not really.
pick number 28.
All right, for pick number 28, I'm going to go with a guy that I still think is still growing as a major league hitter. This guy hasn't really found a spot yet. Has played all over the diamond. Has played a little bit of second, a little bit of first and third. Uh, but this guy, I think, can hit, and I think that he's still growing and will continue to hit, and that's going to be Ryan McMahon.
That's an interesting pick. I did not include him in my top 30 just because his his park adjusted stats are not very good. They were worse than I was expecting. He's an 82 OPS plus for
You
his
know,
career.
that does kind of scare me a little bit, but I think that looking at his prospect stuff, his prospect numbers. I mean, he got as high as the number 36 overall prospect in baseball, according to Baseball Prospectus, was in the top 100 uh, in 2018. So I think that he's proven he can hit in the minor leagues. In 2018, 870 OPS in Albuquerque. I know that it's a hitter-friendly environment, but I still think that he can translate that to the major leagues.
All right. Well, I'm going to make my final pick here. This is the 29th overall pick, and this is going to be similar to the Frazier and the Dom Smith picks. I'm going to take Tyler O'Neill here, who was traded for another guy who I drafted earlier, Gonzalez. He's never really had a clear path to playing time in St. Louis, even though he did hit a walk-off home run off Mark Melanson once, but has never had a clear path to playing time. A career 101 hitter of the OPS plus for his career, could play all three outfield positions. He's very fast for somebody his size, 5'11. So it's not as if he's super tall, but he's pretty fast, a very good defensive player. And I think that he can hit more than what he's shown so far. So I'm going to go Tyler O'Neill.
Tyler O'Neill, a guy that I don't have on my top 30.
All right. He was drafted in the third round, 85th overall, out of I believe it's pronounced Garibaldi High School in British Columbia. He's Canadian.
Interesting.
All right, wrap us up.
All right, with our last pick, I'm going to take a guy who is really a rare specimen, a guy who left Coors Field and became a better hitter out of Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois. That's going to be the outfielder Mike Tauchman.
I had him as an honorable mention. The only thing that he's already 28, I believe, right?
Yes, he's one of the older guys, but last year 3.8 WAR, even playing in Yankee Stadium. That's still pretty good.
Pardon me, he's 29 actually. So that did stop me. I do think that I do believe that guys who leave the Rockies coaching and go to the Yankees, I think that they're probably a little bit better. So I
Yeah, I
do
would think
believe
so.
that I do believe that he is this kind of a hitter. He's a solid everyday player, so that's a good pick.
Yeah, I think that
All right.
last year he really showed that he could play Major League Baseball.
All right. Well, how many players on your top 30 did not draft?
On my top 30, this one might have had a little bit more than before. Uh, Actually, no, this one only had four that did not get drafted in my top 30. In
I had.
order, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I had two.
You had two. Okay. So yeah, I had four. In order, 24 and 25, Garrett Cooper and Ryan Healy. Then 29 and 30, Kendall Graveman and Mauricio Dubon.
Interesting. I had two. I would have dropped Dan Jansen down to the number 30 spot. So I had him there. And then Hunter Dozier as well.
All right. Hunter Dozier was a guy that just missed my list.
And Corey Knable was the guy who just missed mine, was the last one left off. I also had in my honorable mentions Cooper, who you mentioned, Mauricio Dubon, you also mentioned him, and Ryan Stanek, the opener.
The original opener, yes.
Well,
Stanek, very
Sergio
good.
Romo was the original opener. I
Oh,
need to
that's true.
correct you
That's true.
there.
But the one who made it cool, Ryan Stanek.
Yes. Romo had the idea, Stanek had the vision.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I think that was very fun. Let's go over the picks. I surprised Nick Aguilera, of course, Bryant first, and then took Aaron Judge, Mitch Garver, John Gray, Sean Manaea, Marco Gonzalez, Brett Keller, Clint Frazier, Adam Frazier, so Frazier brothers, Dom Smith, Victor Caratini, Chad Green, Michael Lorenz, Chad Pinder, and Tyler O'Neill. Nick Aguilera took Cody Bellinger, Austin Meadows, Jeff McNeil, Hunter Renfroe, Luke Voigt, Tim Anderson, Matt Boyd, Trey Mancini, Mike Yastrzemski, Oscar Mercado, Trevor Williams, Caleb Smith, Emilio Pagan, Ryan McMahon, and Mike Tauchman. And I did not take Danny Jansen, and I'm still very embarrassed by that, as I am with the Sean Manaea no hitter. I would like to apologize to all the listeners. I did not do my reading up on Sean's backstory. I only looked at the statistics, so I would like to apologize there. For the Danny Jansen thing, I have no excuse. That was a very bad mistake by me. I would still draft him 30. I should say I do believe that he has some of the prospect luster still attached. So that's where I those are my two official stances there. I want them to be known to everybody.
It's all right, Andrew. I keep messing up who drafted who, so we're about even now.
We're about even. Well, for the Cal Corn Troll Project, for the 14th inning stretch, I'm Andrew Varga. You can follow me on Twitter at Andrew_Varga. He's Nick Aguilera. I actually handle this time. It is at by Nick Aguilera. He got rid of the Nick X Aguilera
I
handle.
did. That is still my Instagram handle, though.
Oh, so if you'd like to follow him on
Go
Instagram, you
check
get
out my
a.
photography.
Oh yeah, you post plenty of tremendous photos. All right, well, I'm Andrew Varga. I hope that everybody has a very nice day.